I'm your host, Alan Gouger, and today we have Jim Peterson from Lumagen. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good today. Thanks for having me.
All right. Maybe you can give us some insight, bring us up to date, anything you're working on that you want to tell us about.
Okay. I'd be happy to. Lumagen, I think, has been the premier video processor company now for over 20 years. We've outlasted a number of competitors, and our current generation is called the Radiance Pro. And that goes into a lot of high-end home theaters, including a lot of directors, producers in the movie industry. And our goal is to be the studio reference standard in the home. So our goal is always to reproduce what you would have in a studio as the master. In fact, in one producer's using the Lumigen to do grading for the home releases for the major motion pictures that he works on. So
Interesting.
we are doing that specifically for HDR because we have our HDR dynamic tone mapping, which analyzes every frame and it actually multiple regions within every frame, detects the scenes, and also then adapts the function of the transfer function for the images to best suit the current scene in the movie.
Right.
Our current generation is the Radiance Pro, and we have three series in that, basically the same functionality, so the same software, same feature set. A lot of our features were developed for specific cases in home theaters. We often would get a call from a dealer, I have this problem I need to resolve. And in some cases, we were able to do that within hours and send them an update. So we are, I believe, the best solution for any home theater. We can basically fix the issues, best scaling, very clean image, very three-dimensional, and very lifelike. It doesn't look artificial
I would
or over
agree.
processed.
Right. It's
Thank
also
you, thank you.
nice, even myself, I've requested special features over the years and you've accommodated.
Yeah, no, we are really trying to listen to our customers. Our feature set is in reaction to requests from dealers and calibrators around the world. And so we try to do things that our customers like, even if it's not particularly you know, that's something that we like nonlinear stretch is one of my examples that I don't use nonlinear stretch, but we have a lot of customers who love it. Take
Right.
16 by 9, 185, 190, make it fit a 240 screen. You can do that with our nonlinear stretch. We had the first nonlinear stretch was about 2006, 7, 8 in that time frame. So we've had it now for a very long time, and we've improved it, over the time. But mostly, it's very similar to what we had back before 2010, and when we first introduced it. So we have a very technical feature set. So there's lots of things you can do, lots of small details, multiple memories, multiple setups. So you can have like a day and a night and a game mode and stuff like that. So we've always had that in our products. And that gets used more today. Now with HDR, we have both calibrations for SDR and HDR in our CMSs. 4,900 point CMS, 3D LUT, 21 point parametric, 1D LUT for calibration. And if you really want to get the best, you want to use the Lumigen 1D LUT to really tune the grayscale, since that's really the most important aspect of calibration, other than black level. And I always tell people black level's the first thing to calibrate, get that right.
Mhm.
Get your gamma approximately right, and the Lumigen can, with CalMan or ChromaPure or Color Space, can get the calibration really dialed in for any home theater, whether it's TV based or projector based. Most of our clients are projector based, and a lot of our features are for that aspect ratio control. We just introduced a new instant aspect, so you can choose instant, less than a tenth of a second
And
instant.
that really is
Um,
instant. I've
Yes, it
used
is
it.
very fast. Yeah. And so half a second, 1 second or 2 seconds. So depending on whether you're controlling masking, you might want to choose a little bit longer time, half second or a second. But that's a big redo for us. About a year ago, we finished, or we're close to finishing, but in September release, we did a production release of our pipeline enhancements, which was significant improvements in the quality of image, mostly for 4K 60.
Mhm.
but also 4K 24, some deinterlacing improvements for 1080i sources and stuff like that. So we are all about constant improvement. If you look at our release dates, we have had many releases since the product was introduced. I chose an FPGA-based architecture way back in 2002 when we started the design because it allows us to basically completely re-architect, if we want to, the
Right.
product. And that's what we pretty much did when we did our pipeline enhancements. The FPGA and the Radiance Pro was much larger than we needed when we introduced the product. And so that's allowed us to add lots of features, the pipeline enhancements, the precision enhancements, dynamic tone mapping. Basically wasn't, HDR did not exist in home theaters when we introduced the product in 2015. And now with a free update, anyone who bought the product since we introduced it gets all the current features, including instant aspect ratio control, nonlinear stretch. Programmability is a key feature that we have in our products.
So the work that's been done recently with the pipeline, is there further development coming from this?
We are going to be doing an enhancement in the dynamic tone mapping specifically for desaturation. There's a very small percentage of scenes right now that we chose to allow to clip. We knew we needed to work on that, and that's our next task on desaturation.
Yeah.
The other thing we're going to be working on is we're going to be trying to add pip and pop. We're going to do what commercially reasonable things we can to get the pip and pop feature for those in the 4000, 4400 series that are interested, which we want to get that done for them. We have features that were specific for like 2 or 3 people. We added recently a letterbox bottom mode for top-down masking. We added a letterbox top mode, which is for bottom-up masking,
Well,
and
that comes in
literally
handy,
there's a
right?
handful.
Especially
It
for
does
people
for
that
the
have
few
a
people
pull
that want.
down screen or
Mhm.
a motorized screen because they could just drop it down enough to give you a 235-to-1 aspect ratio, and the Lumagen will detect that automatically and map it to the screen at the top.
Absolutely. So we do have at least one client that does exactly that. He drops the screen and basically uses the letterbox top so that the bottom of the image, the top of the image is always pretty much the same place, and
Right.
the bottom is moving up and down based on the aspect ratio.
You know, it's stuff like that, those nice little features. Nobody else has that. I appreciate those because I use those all the time now. You keep adding some nice surprises as we go
Mhm.
along.
Right, and the FPGA is not full yet, so we're not quite sure what we'll do. We think we're in pretty good shape
Yeah.
from feature set, but we will be doing refinements.
Yeah.
We think, for the foreseeable future, the pip and pop feature. I probably am, forgetting a feature or two, but those are the main ones that we're trying to finish up on the Radiance Pro. And like you say, it's all about doing things that we're being requested to do. For example, we added 2.75 as a source aspect ratio, 2.55 as
Hmm.
a source aspect ratio, and increased the output selection range to allow up to 275 for the screen. We have one customer that wanted 2.75, and we did it. It's something that was a request. We're all about doing what our dealers and our customers need or desire. I mean, instant aspect, I don't use it. I use a half a second, but some people wanted it to be able to have faster switching. And for
Right.
documentaries, that makes sense when they're changing from 16:9, 4:3, 2:3:5. That instant aspect is actually useful for that.
So the oddball aspect ratio, the request that you accommodated, is there any source native to that or
So basically, if you have a 275 screen, there are a few older movies that are 275, and I won't try to remember which titles they were.
right?
Well, maybe something like a Ben-Hur or something back in the day. There's very few titles for that, and literally there was one person requesting that feature,
Yeah.
and we spent a week on it for them.
Yep. Very nice.
So we try to be the best support. I mean, I have dealers who say I'll never buy anything but a Lumigen because when I need help Friday night at 8 p.m., Jim answers the phone. And
Yep.
so I definitely want to, give the best support. Customers can call me, dealers can call me. And HDMI is a tough nut to crack for a lot of dealers, and we've had a lot of experience working through issues. And so I have a lot of experience, years and years actually, with multiple calls a day, helping people do setup and also helping people work through HDMI cabling issues, system issues, setup issues. I need this specific feature. What can I do? I just set up a unit for a customer on a 2143. He has a 1080p projector and he wanted to do 2.0, which that product doesn't do. And he wanted a subtitle mode, which we've actually added in the Radiance Pro, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, but a subtitle mode, and so I did some setup for him. It took me a while to make it work, but by using the various features in the 2143, I made it do something that we never anticipated it would need to do. And so those are the kind of features you don't see, people
Right.
don't hear about. Our dealers know that when they have a problem, they put a Lumagen in and it will resolve the issues and get them the image the way the customer wants.
Are you aware of anything behind the scene that's coming source wise? Any improvement in HDR or a wider dynamic range in HDR?
Well, there's two parts to that. One is I'm definitely better 4K rather than 8K. Mathematically, from a compression point of view, I haven't done the math, but I'm pretty sure the math would say that taking the bits for a given bit bandwidth and a given compression scheme and making 4K better color depth, better color format would be a better use of that bandwidth. If you're giving more bandwidth, it'd be better used for better 4K than for 8K, in my opinion. 4K, you're sitting at one screen width, which is my recommended seating distance. 4K is slightly smaller than
Yeah.
the human visual perception. Oversampling is good. We've actually done some experiments. Chris Deering and I sat here with RS4100, which is what you can see behind me right here. And we actually put 4K into it and had it upscaled to 8K. We put 4K into it, had it output 4K, and then we had the Lumagen and have it do the processing and the enhancements in the Lumagen and then output 4K and have it upscale. And the
Mhm.
best of that was definitely going through the Lumagen. The oversampling of an 8K projector did help. But for 8K content, mathematically, I think it's better to spend it on better pixels. You
Right.
know, right now we're HDR at 10 bits. We could do 12 bits, but I'd rather see going to a 422 or even a
Oh, I would love to
444
see that.
compression.
I agree. I agree.
So
Uh,
I think it's going to be a big discussion, so to speak. There's lots of different opinions on these things. From my point of view, with my math background, I believe better 4K for consumer sources would be where you should spend it. 8K TVs, 8K projectors have their place, but if you're sitting 1X, there's very little difference between a 4K and an 8K
right.
projector or television just because the pixel size, human visual perception. um, I had the good fortune to work with several PhD perception physicists and was able to learn some stuff back when I worked at Tektronix. And one arc second, 1/60th of 1 degree of arc is about what humans can see visually, and it's about 1/9 that for chroma. And of course, chroma affects luma, so you got to be careful that if you have a chroma at 420, it can actually change the intensity, and you could see that at 4K. So if we could go to a true 444 10-bit HDR, I think that would be a very good and less lossy. I believe the H.265 is better, but I actually worked back in the day on the inner loop of a MPEG-2 algorithm, and I couldn't believe it looked as good as it did because of all the bits they're throwing out when they convert to the DCT in the frequency domain. They're throwing out, basically the first thing they do with the DC term was divide by 3. So you go from 8 bits of the day down to like 6.5 bits, and then it gets much worse there, much more aggressive for the chroma. So better chroma, lower compression, near lossless compression would be the first step. And then the next step would be a higher color format like 422 or
So you speak of
444.
422. Is this just a dream, or is there any chance the studios are listening and we might get it someday?
That's an interesting question. I don't know what they're thinking. I happen to have a friend who is a producer at a studio, and in our discussions, I think that, you know, there are hints. He can't tell me what they're doing, but I think there are some hints that 422 could be, especially if you had like a Kaleidoscape Strato. They
Yeah.
can choose, if they do a next generation, they could choose a better encoding scheme at 422, or or less compression, because they have that capability. And I've actually made that suggestion to them a number of times, as have others. I'm not the
Well,
only
they're
one.
the perfect platform, right, for doing so.
Right.
And there's probably plenty of people that would be willing to pay a premium, for that kind of content. I would.
Absolutely. I certainly would. If it's a movie like Top Gun Maverick, where I just want to have it absolutely perfect, I would definitely pay a premium for a better encoding.
Right.
And I have mentioned that. I don't know what their plans are. They're holding their cards close to the vest too on that. But that would be my choice: is better 4K, better compression, lower loss, and potentially higher. I mean, 420 at 4K is actually pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But you can do better. There are cases where you can see that chroma affected the luminance, and by making the chrominance 444, so full resolution chroma, you should be able to see that in the luminance. And
Yep.
so people say, well, gee, you say, it's only 1/9. How come you can say that and then still say you want 444? It's because chrominance affects luminance.
You mentioned earlier there's a little bit of clipping, and you're working on refinement. What is the best setting that you
Currently,
recommend?
currently for the Lumagen, the owners, I use the medium desaturation.
Okay.
That helps the worst of the worst cases, which turns out to be the Mad Max Fury Road. There's the truck exploding in the air scene, was the scene that we used for that, as a kind of a worst case. There are other scenes that clip,
Yeah.
but that scene was very obvious, and so that setting was set for that scene.
And can you explain what is desaturation? How does it work?
What the desaturation does is, if you have a P3 projector and the movie has colors outside of P3, the projector can't represent those.
All
So
right.
typically what happens is you hit the edge in brightness or gamut, or the combination is really what it is. It's bright colors. Your projectors can do, let's say they might be able to do 90% of P3 red, but only up to 40 or 50% of intensity. So as soon as you start going above that, that projector is going to not be able to represent the correct colors, and you're going to have many colors being represented as a single color because they're clipping.
Understood.
What desaturation does, in the studio reference standard, there's always discussion on this, but what it does is it reduces the intensity so that the color can be preserved and the details in the colors can be preserved. There's actually a really great test stick by Spears and Munsell. Some of their scenes, they said they needed to work on the next revision, because the blue neon in the Seattle skyscape was actually purple and they were supposed to be blue.
Right.
So they're working on that, and that's what they're doing, is they're going to do a desaturation of those to make the colors be correct colors, but maybe not quite as bright. And so what the
Yeah.
desaturation that we're working on is color preserving, which is Dolby Vision does that, and other studio reference tools, I believe, do that as well. At least I'm told Dolby Vision does that. And so what that does is it preserves the color and it adjusts the intensity so that the colors can be remaining correct in the data. So when you calibrate to a, let's say, 709 projector right now, with you were watching 2020, there's a lot of colors that clip, and desaturation could work on that. We're looking at doing that for 709, but mostly we're concerned with 2020 represented as 2020 on a projector and desaturating colors at the, basically there will be an adjustment. Right now there's 4 steps. We're still working on the details. I've done all the math. Patrick has the work to do the integration and the scene stuff and all that kind of stuff. But it looks like we're going to have 4 settings for desaturation, and the new desaturation might change our minds going forward. But right now, that's the way I have the math set up.
So what's happening is you could have a perfectly calibrated projector, but if a scene is too bright, any primary or secondary could run out of headroom.
Well, the D65, most projectors, especially with the Lumagen, we can do the 1D LUT, get the D65 for the grayscale pretty good. So there's 2 aspects brightness and color, which is X, Y, Y. So little x, little y, big cap Y, which is intensity. So little x, y is what color it is and how bright it is, and those two play together. You could have a smaller value for the intensity, and it could be represented fairly accurately. But as that color gets brighter, the projector can't represent that visually. And so
Okay.
it basically clips at its edge point, the gamut limit. The gamut limit for the projector does vary based on how bright the particular color is. And so those things all play into it. You've got to calibrate. You've got to do the desaturation, or either in a LUT, or you got to do it in math in the hardware, and that's what we're going to be working on.
Understood. All right. I really appreciate your CMS.
We have the 21-point grayscale, which is really the most important, and that's a parametric grayscale. And we've actually requested that the parametric aspect of it get used. So far, the calibration companies have not, but manually you can go in and you can change the points. If you got a point between the points you want to adjust, you can actually do that. The 3D LUT, 4,900 points. What we're seeing is both Sony JVC are in pretty good shape from the DEs out of the box for the
Right.
colors. They both have some internal calibration, and you can get, without using the Lumagen, you can get fairly low DEs throughout the color space. I'm very anxious to see the production release of Calman's Aurora color engine, which will now give them the capability to do a Rec 2020, hopefully with desaturation if requested. Color Space can do that, but you have to, it's a little harder to use. You have to go in and do an augmented LUT. And so there are a lot of things you can do to optimize for your particular projector if you're a good calibrator.
Anything else you can think of in closing you'd like to say?
Well, the one interesting thing that people don't expect of the Lumagen is we introduced the 5000 series, and that was my efforts to radically reduce the jitter. Jitter at 18 gigahertz spec is about 102. It's actually shown in a graph, so it's about 102 picoseconds. The Radiance Pro 4000 has a jitter at 18 gigahertz of about 80 picoseconds. So well within spec. In the 5000 series, I was able to drop that to about 45 picoseconds for the video output. What that does, it also reduces the electrical noise. What I did is there's like 30 some linear power supplies inside the 5000 series to dramatically reduce the amount of noise in the box and the amount of noise coming out of the box on the HDMI connection. So very low noise, very low jitter, reduces the bit error rate, which is going to improve your picture. Back in the day at 1080p, if you had bit error rates, you saw flashy dots on the screen. In 4K, they're masked, but they're masking them so you're reducing your resolution. The quality is not going to be as good, and actually the noise in the HDMI output can actually affect DILA and LCOS because they're analog display technology. So reducing the electrical noise gives you a cleaner background. And we have very low noise, very low jitter, especially in the 5000 series, our new top of the line.
So reducing the jitter, does that improve both the audio and video?
It was dramatic to me in the audio. I believe I saw improvement in the video, but it's more of a subtle, more three-dimensional look in the image, a little bit cleaner in the image is what I note. So I'm very happy to tell people, I expect you to definitely hear the improvement in the audio. And so far, everyone who's fed back to me says, yes, it's dramatically improved by going through the Lumagen to any audio processor. I do have most people say, I also see an improvement. Is that there? And I can say that because of the reduced bit error rate by having ultra low jitter, the clock jitter was measured at about 10 picoseconds. So that really helps the audio because you're feeding in very low jitter to the audio processor, which has its own de-jitter circuits. And so you're feeding the ultimate low jitter signal, which will reduce your distortion in the audio. For the video, it really is how much noise is getting into your LCOS or your DILA. What's the bit error rate, and how that bit error rate would have been masked in another system that it doesn't have to be masked. It's actually the real data when you have a Lumagen as opposed to some other product.
And in the 5000 series, you have multiple outputs. Is there any one output that you have to use to take advantage of the filtering?
Well, the 5348, we have three outputs. Output 3 is for the video. It's only video. Well, you can actually put audio on it if you want. And then we have outputs 1 and 2. Output 1 is audio only, 720p. But what we've noticed is there's a lot of audio processors that their capture range isn't quite up to a 720p. So they've designed for UHD at 9 gigahertz or even 18, and they are required by the spec to work all the way down to 720p. But you're looking at a clock difference of at least 4x or 8x, depending on what you design your sweet spot for. And so on the 5348, what I've actually recommended to people is for these audio processors, use output 2 with audio and video to your audio processor. Therefore, they're running at 8, not at 9 or 18 gigahertz, which is in their sweet spot. So their phase lock loops are all in their center, which is going to make them work better.
Right.
And then output 3 goes to your audio or to your video. We have a 5244 at 6 in, 2 out. I did a last minute redesign. Literally, it was about to be built, and I threw out the boards. I had to stop it at the assembly house because I said I'm going to make a change. So I changed it. So output 1 on the 5244 can be audio and video, because it just got to the point where we're seeing enough of these high-end audio processors not have the capture range that they should, and so we can set output 1 on the 5244 to 9 gigahertz with audio and video, and then output 2 on the 5244, the second of 2 outputs at 18 gigahertz.
Nice. And Chris Deering works close with you, if I'm not mistaken, correct? He does a lot of calibration.
Chris is a dealer for us, and he helps us by doing evaluation. He's a great reviewer. He's got I'll look at 5 or 10 titles. He'll look at 50. And so he's very good at finding issues and bringing them to our attention. And he is always a good resource for us for suggestions of, do this feature. I'd like to see that feature and stuff. So we get a lot of good feedback. He's not related to Lumagen in any way, except
understood.
He's one of our dealers.
Yeah, he's got a very critical eye, and he is available for calibration.
Yeah, one of the top 2 that I recommend, top 2 or 3. There's several others. Very experienced, and he has my cell phone number, I like to say. He is not, he called me, I guess it was yesterday. He had a question. Something new came up he hadn't done before, and I would say, yeah, we can do that. Got to do it this way. And so there's a lot of hidden abilities in the Lumagen that often, to accomplish something, I'll say you can do it this way, or you can do it that way. And it's just that there's just prolific number of features that you can use that are very, very handy for dealers. And like I said, I have dealers who say I would never buy anything but a Lumagen because I want to be able to ask them these questions. I want to do this the best I can for my customer.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Anybody out there looking for a top of the line video processor, Lumagen is it just keeps getting better and better. So appreciate all your hard work.
Well, thank you. We definitely want to be the absolute ultimate in video processors. And we're here, we support our products, and we've been here for over 20 years. So I think, we've proven a good track record going forward that you're not going to buy a product and have the company be out of business in a couple of years.
Well, very nice. We appreciate it. So, all right,
Great.
Jim.
Thank you so much.
You take care, and thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.